Tonight, the desperate victims of our state's forgotten crisis. The people of our bushfire-ravaged south coast left broken and struggling to survive months after the flames are extinguished. Well, tonight, yet more promises of help. The protesting parent who can't stay away from the law. The southwest Sydney mum arrested while holding her son, facing another police investigation. School's in, students are back in the classroom for a staggered start, and the Premier says they will be full-time by the end of the month. Will the government keep the JobKeeper allowance? The coming Canberra BRAWL, with the pandemic tipped to leave a record budget black hole. Sydney's all ready for a big night out, with restaurants and cafes open on Friday, but why many now say it's not worth their while. And contact made, the NRL stars back at proper training as the league gears up for the restart.
This is 10 News First Sydney with Sandra Sully.
Good evening. The Prime Minister has promised bushfire-ravaged communities across New South Wales they have not been forgotten, despite the shift in focus towards fighting the COVID pandemic. It comes as people on the state's south coast say that months after the bushfire disaster, some are still living rough and struggling to survive. Here's our National Affairs editor, Hugh Riminton.
How could anyone forget this? The coldest thing in a blazing summer was the reception for a Prime Minister, famously just back from his Hawaiian holiday and desperate ever since to make amends.
And a day has not passed in our government where those issues have not been getting the attention that they deserve.
The National Bushfire Recovery Agency has been spending money at twice the rate originally expected. They'll hit $1 billion by the end of June. But in Cobargo, the shops are largely closed, the ruins still riddled with asbestos, the people broken and desperate.
It's like we've been sort of forgotten about, you know, like it could have happened a long time ago, and it should have happened a long time ago. There needs to be accountability for the delays.
Andrew Hayden lost his cafe and half a dozen other properties. Until recently, he says, some people were still in tents.
One particular girl that moved into my place was sleeping underneath the Narooma Bridge with a young 5-year-old child.
Much of the worst of the fire-hit area falls into the federal seat of Eden-Monaro, now the centre of a high-stakes by-election in tiny Cobargo, where a father and son died in a desperate bid to protect their property from the bushfires. The mood remains cranky.
There are some people who are depressed. Some people are having post-traumatic stress syndrome issues.
There is a fragility out there, and there is Australians that are healing at different stages, and we've seen the convergence of drought and fire, COVID-19, and there is a lot bearing down on these people.
The federal government plan is to spend $2 billion on bushfire recovery, much of it driven by what local communities say they need.
Look, we're working very hard to make sure there is no blockage, and there are no blockages to how this money rolls out, and we are finding that the money is getting into individuals' and businesses' pockets very quickly.
Hugh Riminton for 10 News First.
A southwest Sydney mother whose protest arrest went viral after her screaming son was taken from her by police is back in trouble with the law. The beautician has been reported to authorities for carrying on her business against lockdown restrictions, and that was even before fresh drama erupted today.
It was an ugly scene, no matter where you were standing, as a screaming boy was snatched from his mother.
He needs to be with his mother.
On Saturday, Renee Altacriti was among around 40 people rallying or exercising their rights against the lockdown restrictions. She was eventually arrested and fined $1,000 for breaching the strict rules, after also refusing to give police her details.
The right to protest is one of the basic tenets of democracy, and that should always be available. But it worries me that they're compromising the health of the people they're protesting. I didn't notice good social distancing at those protests.
Now there's a suggestion she may have also been operating her cosmetic business against the COVID-19 rules. Just days ago, a member of the public inquired on the business's social media page, "Are you open for business?" The reply, yes. Police have confirmed they've received reports about it, and if proven, it could result in a $5,000 fine. That's a hefty prospect for the Sydney mum who was at the centre of more drama today.
Should you have had your child at protest relief?
Since the weekend, Alta Crete has reached out online to supporters.
So thank you so much for everyone's private messages of love and support. Without you all, this wouldn't be possible. I really appreciate it.
A sentiment backed by another protester.
I will be doing everything in my power to get behind her and make sure she gets justice.
Yet the message from authorities is clear. Overall, police are praising the community's behaviour amid the restrictions as we now prepare for some of them to ease. In a state of about 8 million people, just 1,200 infringement notices have been issued. All issued in a bid to keep coronavirus at bay. Alice Hogg for 10 News First.
From Emu Plains to Enfield, this had to be a school first. Students racing to get into class.
To see my friends.
So excited. It was just really, yeah.
Sometimes there are no words because after a 6-week absence, what could sound better than this chorus?
Good morning, Miss Matthias.
Welcoming half her class back, this is Dorothy Matthias's first year of teaching, and she's learnt a lot.
Nothing compares to being face-to-face with your students and being able to teach them and seeing that their faces and their reactions and teaching to that.
If the next 2 weeks go well, we expect to have full-time face-to-face teaching very quickly in New South Wales by the end of May.
While it's a staggered student start, there's been a massive new school addition, more than 550,000 hygiene supplies, including 40,000 bottles of hand sanitizer. And while we know parents have done a great job at home, teachers have their work cut out for them. This term, educators will be teaching a refined curriculum, looking at the essentials and drilling down on any gaps that may have been missed over the past few weeks. Some staples like excursions, sport and assemblies are still off the books, but everyone is working hard to get back to normal.
I'm really excited. It's an absolute pleasure to have our students return today.
It's a bit hard getting up so early in the morning again, but other than that, we're good.
Ali Donaldson for 10 News First.
A young boy is now fighting for life after an accident at his school on Sydney's northern beaches. Kimberly Pratt is at Sydney Children's Hospital at Randwick for us tonight. Kimberly, do we know what happened?
Sandra, that boy is in a critical condition here after tripping and hitting his head at school. It was just before lunch when the 8-year-old was airlifted from Mona Vale Public School to Sydney Children's Hospital, where he remains fighting for his life. Now, initial reports suggested he had fallen from play equipment, but police have confirmed he in fact tripped, most likely on a tree root while running, and then fell head first. And that head injury was so severe, we understand he then went into cardiac arrest. He was treated at the school by specialist paramedics before being taken here for further treatment. His family was also notified and taken here by Northern Beaches Police, where they wait anxiously, along with the school community, for an update on his condition. Sandra.
What an awful afternoon. All right, Kimberly, thank you. Another elderly resident has lost their life at an aged care home in Western Sydney, which is at the heart of one of our deadliest coronavirus outbreaks. Paris Martin is at Newmarch House in Caddens. Paris, do we know what happened this time?
Well, Sandra, this resident is the 18th person to lose their life during this pandemic at the Newmarch facility. This patient had previously tested positive for COVID-19, but then returned 2 negative results before passing away over the weekend. Because of that, their death will not be included in the state's coronavirus death toll. Now, we have spoken with another woman whose mother passed away here at Newmarch House in very similar circumstances over the weekend. She's told 10 News First it is incredibly distressing that her mother's death is not deemed to be COVID-19 related, because she is convinced the virus has weakened her mother, making her more susceptible to other illnesses. While the cause of death really is a matter for a medical examiner, we have heard from Anglicare who have expressed their condolences to the families who have lost loved ones, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Sandra?
OK, Paris, thank you for the update. New details have been revealed about the Porsche driver involved in a freeway tragedy that left 4 police officers dead. A court heard Richard Pusey allegedly had fantasies about killing people and bragged to friends about reaching speeds of up to 300 kilometres an hour in his car.
Accused of taunting dead and dying police, Richard Pusey believes he should be set free. The 41-year-old today applied for bail. The magistrate hearing he has an extensive criminal history. The court heard during the Eastern Freeway tragedy, he filmed for more than 3 minutes. Opposing Pusey's release, the prosecution argued he would commence a campaign of harassment towards witnesses, had abusive and violent tendencies to police and the public. He seems to become fixated on people, and he's got significant financial resources to allow him to flee the state. The mortgage broker's lawyer tendered a psychology report arguing Pusey needed psychiatric treatment outside of prison, but the prosecutor pointed out that same report also showed he fantasised about killing people. The court also heard Pusey texted a friend weeks before the crash, bragging, "I did 300 in the turbo yesterday, it was amazing." Wearing a blue face mask and rubber gloves, Pusey sat quietly in the dock for almost 3 hours, occasionally closing his eyes as the prosecution and defence argued their cases on why he should or shouldn't be granted bail. Magistrate Johanna Metcalf will hand down her decision on Thursday. Jade Kotick for 10 News First.
In Canberra, it has largely been about the common good so far, but the government and the opposition are now on a collision course over COVID-19. Federal Parliament resumes tomorrow, and our political editor Peter Van Onselen says we should expect some fireworks.
Reports the $130 billion JobKeeper program might be readjusted.
We are just now starting to reopen our economy.
Required a prime ministerial clarification today.
All of this is very premature.
Premature?
We are 6 weeks into a 6-month program.
You opened up this speculation last Friday.
There was a review built into JobKeeper to be done before the end of June.
But are the reports accurate?
We've put the commitment in to support Australians over that period of time.
Whew, that's a relief. A commitment without caveats.
And as we need to adjust based on advice and the strength of the economy and how many people we're getting back into jobs, well, these are the things we'll be watching carefully.
Labor is carefully watching what might happen, telling 10 News First.
And this will just add to people's feeling of insecurity if the government from day to day is changing what it says might happen.
The opposition leader has broader concerns with the program.
Well, the problem is people who've simply missed out. Casuals, visa holders, there's the whole of the arts and entertainment sector, basically haven't had any support during this crisis.
While the government may look to shorten the 6-month JobKeeper package, Labor says it might need to run longer.
Clearly what you'll need is a transition out of it, not it there one day and gone the next.
Alongside other changes to how Australia does business.
Before the crisis, we had insecure work, we had stagnant wages, we had many people really struggling to get by. We need to not leave anyone behind.
Meanwhile, tomorrow was supposed to be the day the Treasurer delivered his back in black budget. Instead, he'll explain how much debt the government's racking up combating the coronavirus and how much damage is being done to the economy. It's now unlikely Josh Frydenberg will ever hand down a budget surplus. This tree just over my shoulder is known as the budget tree, and the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, would have been hoping to hand down a surplus. They probably shouldn't have got those mugs printed up saying back in black, but I do think most Australians will forgive the need for debt to fund these packages that have been rolled out. Where the debate will really be interesting going forward, though, is on how the details of those funds are being distributed, whether it has been done fairly, and how successful they are in keeping unemployment down. This is where the real political contest will be, not just this week with Parliament returning, but in the months and even years ahead as the fallout from the coronavirus crisis gets assessed.
There'll be no escaping it. All right, Peter, thank you. The full details of the charges facing AFL great Dean Laidley have now been revealed. The high-profile former player and coach is accused of stalking and possessing drugs. The court hearing, he is suffering gender and mental health issues.
Dean Laidley's son Kane left the Melbourne assessment prison where inside his dad was preparing to be taken away to a rehabilitation centre. The former Kangaroos coach was granted bail after being charged with stalking and possessing ice. Police accuse him of making more than 100 calls to an ex-partner, including 43 on one night. The court heard Laidley is dealing with a number of issues, including gender dysmorphia and substance abuse.
At the moment, his main concern is his mental health, which has been for some months now. Prior to all this started, his mental health has been very, very low.
High-profile AFL figures provided character references, saying the behaviour was out of character, including Dennis Pagan, Mark Williams, Guy McKenna, Wayne Schwass, James Brayshaw and Brent Harvey. And the AFL Players Association has agreed to fund Laidley's treatment at a private residential facility. The 53-year-old appeared in court via video link from the Melbourne Assessment Prison. He had his arms crossed for much of the hearing. Several times he looked down at the ground or held his head in his hands. He spoke only once, replying yes when the magistrate asked him if he could hear the court. 4 Victoria police officers have been suspended over the leaking of photos of Laidley in custody.
Yes, he's devastated by it. Devastated, as is his family.
He'll be back in court next month. Annie Kearney for 10 News First.
Stay with us after the break. A senior Carnival cruise staffer takes the stand in the Ruby Princess inquiry. New Zealand relaxes its lockdown even further with school and domestic travel given the go-ahead. Why one of Australia's most notorious serial killers could be back on the streets in weeks. Why some restaurants and cafes will remain closed despite easing restrictions. And the Queen puts royal duties on hold as she hunkers down at Windsor Castle. Two police officers have been spat on, arresting an alleged domestic violence offender who had just thrown roof tiles at them. The attack has been condemned by the top brass of the police, who say emergency services are repeatedly being targeted during this pandemic.
Hot-tempered and hurling tiles. That's how police claim they found Elijah Delaney. The 24-year-old filmed hopping along the tops of houses in an alleged suburban rampage.
It's one of those incidents where police go along, they take all reasonable precautions to look after the safety of themselves and others.
But even in numbers and with police dogs, officers say they were under attack. Police claim they were at the house to talk about an alleged domestic violence incident between Delaney and his former partner. But when they arrived, he was shouting, swearing and throwing roof tiles.
We didn't see anything being thrown, but we did hear a lot of it sounded like they were crashing on the ground and all that.
Eventually, he came down on a ladder. Allegedly spitting on a constable and senior constable as he was arrested.
It's a disgusting behaviour and it's really something that we would like to see people make a conscious effort to stop.
Mr Delaney made no bid for release as he faced court on 11 charges, including assaulting police, damaging property and domestic violence, as neighbours begin the costly clean-up. Michael Hammond for 10 News First.
Prominent union leader and environmentalist Jack Mundy has died at the age of 90. Mr Mundy will be best remembered as the architect of the world's first green bans, a type of strike action where workers would step in if green spaces or heritage buildings were at risk of being demolished. The movement saved Centennial Park from potentially becoming a sports stadium, and it also saved the Rocks from being developed. Tonight he is being celebrated for his tenacity and courage in preserving the face of Sydney. Let's check now on the run home and to our eyes in the sky, hovering above Marina Ivanovic. Marina, there's a truck breakdown tonight on the M4 and that's causing a few delays.
Yes, Sandra, the M4 is not looking good tonight. It's very heavy outbound through the Prospect area due to this truck broken down outbound approaching the Prospect Highway. As you can see here, it's attempted to get into the breakdown lane, hasn't managed to quite get there. It's taking out lanes 1 and 2 as a result with an RMS car behind it. That means 3 lanes on the M4 are trying to squish into 1, which is causing extensive delays tonight. Bumper to bumper outbound delays, and they're going all the way back through to the Greystanes area. Sandra, I'm Marina Ivanovic in the Car City Traffic Chopper.
Let's get the latest now on our weather too with Tim Bailey. Tim, biting but blue, and yes, that will do.
Chilled but charming, Souls. Chilled but charming. The weather, Souls, the weather, not the weatherman. Yeah, a bit of a bite about of a morning, but the blue skies, we're loving them. They're helping spirits. Let's check the Daily Bailey weather wall. It was a good-looking day. Minimum 8, OK. That had the knees knocking and the Ugg boots hard to toss out. The maximum 20 was glorious. Currently, on the way back down, 15 degrees. Around New South Wales today, the high 22 at Casino and Thredbo, man, they knew about it at -6. Broken Hill, 17 degrees. Dubbo, likewise. Orange down to 0. It was a biting, nippy morning. 10 degrees the top. Wagga Wagga 1 through to 16. -3 at Canberra. They knew they were alive for a top of 14. And Newcastle 8 to 18. The shivering super suburbs of Sydney this morning. 6 Parramatta to a top of 20. Terry Hill 7 through to 17. And Mascot 8 through to 18 degrees. More blue skies and chilly, chilly morning, Souls.
All right, thank you, Tim. Stay with us after the break. The Queen cancels all upcoming royal duties, not set to return to London for the foreseeable future. A new wave, China reports an increase in coronavirus cases. And under attack, why this driver's goose is cooked. Let's check today's petrol prices around the suburbs of Sydney. And the cheapest we found today was in Bonnyrigg at 95 cents. The average price across the city now is $1.14.2. And we are warning tonight, those prices are going to keep going up.
Car City is making it easier for you to safely buy your next vehicle. 7 days a week. Wander comfortably through 10 acres of vehicles while safely practicing social distancing, or find the car you want online and we'll bring it to you. Carlisle Avenue, Minchinbury. carcity.com.au.
McDonald Jones Homes, making it easier than ever to help you build your future. Don't lose sight of your dream. To find out more, book an appointment or visit the website today.
How good does it feel to know it's Plush Sofa's grand reopening with up to 50% off in showroom and online and 48 months interest-free.
I'm going to propose.
Right! How to Stay Married, Tuesday on 10.
This is going to be the best proposal ever.
They created a viral sensation for $14.
I'm Beach Diz.
Meet the blokes behind Beach Daz.
Oh, no.
Plus, Under the Tuscan Sun author Francis Mays shares the secret Italian escapes you need to add to your post-ISO bucket list. We're living La Dolce Vita tomorrow on Studio 10.
A Carnival Australia executive has denied that he told the New South Wales Ports Authority the Ruby Princess was a non-COVID ship in order to reverse an 11th-hour decision to stop it docking. The special inquiry into the debacle sat for just a few hours this morning, hearing that passengers were not told to adhere to social distancing as they were being let off.
As they walked from the ship, Ruby Princess passengers were waved off with signs saying, "Until we meet again." But no warning they may have been infected with COVID-19.
Were Carnival cruises putting in place 1.5 metre distances between each person or in their groups of 100 as they disembarked? Was that a protocol that was put in place?
No, it wasn't.
And why was that?
I don't recall it being a requirement at the time.
But the Special Commission also has this email from the Ruby Princess's hotel manager at 8:28 a.m, the day before it disembarked, to its administration and customer service officers, among others, reading, NSWPH would like to see we will make sure distance is guaranteed between the guests. I believe we have a call at 9:30 to discuss.
Were you involved in a call with Mr Faval and Ms Burrows around this time?
I was not on that call. No, I was not.
But one phone call he did take part in involved New South Wales Port Authority Executive Emma Fensom after they'd cancelled the ship's permission to dock over concerns two patients who needed ambulances were being tested for COVID-19.
Did you use the expression, it's not a COVID ship, in this phone call?
No, I do not believe I said anything like that. What I may have said is there's no confirmed COVID cases on board at the time.
It had been said that the ambulances are not attending for COVID, that Health had not said that there was COVID on board.
That conversation ultimately led to the ship being allowed to disembark. The first passenger death would occur just 48 hours later. Ursula Hager for 10 News First.
There are mixed messages out of Washington tonight, with the US Vice President's office denying reports that Mike Pence is in quarantine. It follows one of his key aides joining more than a dozen people working at the White House to test positive for coronavirus. US correspondent Eamon Ashton-Atkinson has the details.
During the pandemic, sometimes Mike Pence has worn a mask, other times he hasn't, insisting he's low risk.
Since I don't have the coronavirus, I thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to be here, look him in the eye and say thank you.
But by Friday, the Vice President found out he has been exposed by his press secretary. Yet after learning this, he went to Iowa and no, he didn't wear a mask.
It put the health and safety of the American people first.
Today it was revealed Pence has been quietly avoiding the White House since then. But after news of his self-isolation leaked, the Vice President's office denied he was in quarantine, saying he'd be back at work tomorrow. Not a good look for the President trying to reopen the country if he can't get his own White House in order.
Well, I'm not worried. No, I'm not worried.
But the disease may already be spreading in the West Wing. 3 members of the coronavirus task force are in quarantine, including top Dr. Anthony Fauci. The president's own valet has it, along with 11 Secret Service agents. Yet Donald Trump still won't wear a mask. Mike Pence's self-isolation wasn't the only bad news to hit President Trump today. New projections show the virus could kill up to 137,000 Americans by August, much higher than expected. Eamon Ashton-Atkinson for 10 News First, New York.
There was more good news for Kiwis today, with New Zealand further easing its COVID restrictions. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced that the country will move to level 2 restrictions this Thursday and reopen most of the economy.
Retail, malls, cafes, restaurants, cinemas and other public spaces, including playgrounds and gyms, can reopen.
People will also be allowed to travel around the country and play team sports. And if that all goes well, bars will reopen in 10 days. The Chinese city of Wuhan has recorded its first cluster of coronavirus infections since its lockdown was lifted a month ago. Health authorities announced 5 new cases today in the city where the outbreak is believed to have begun. All of those infected live in the same building complex and were not showing any symptoms. On Friday, the Chinese government unveiled plans to gradually reopen cinemas, museums and other recreational facilities. German techno fans have got their party fix. Despite social distancing restrictions, hundreds danced the night away in their cars at a drive-in rave party. Lasers, glow sticks and confetti gave the event a more authentic feel. Germany has also seen a resurgence in drive-in cinemas during its COVID-19 breakdown, or rather outbreak. A woman in Canada has been stalked, then attacked by a very large and angry goose. A security camera filmed the animal relentlessly charging its unsuspecting victim, forcing her to ditch her bags and run for safety. But the savage assault continued even inside the car, with the goose following her right in. She eventually escaped the onslaught, her driver proving not to be all that much help. Stay with us after the break. One of our most notorious killers set to walk free in weeks. Not worth opening, the restaurants choosing to stay shut despite easing restrictions. and fears melanoma cases will rise as testing rates tumble.
Call us on 13 15 12.
For stepping up in tough times, for doing the little things, for keeping your distance and your sense of humour, for the courage you've shown and protecting your community. Thanks, Australia. The changes to stop the coronavirus aren't easy, but they're working. Keep going, and don't forget to download the COVID Safe app today. Together, we're stopping the spread. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Have you been missing Mel, Lloyd and Celia? Well, they're back with Ed and Sam on the new season of Have You Been Paying Attention? Tonight.
Tonight's top stories. The federal government pledges $650 million for our towns ravaged by the summer bushfires and now being hit hard by the COVID crisis. It comes as work finally began to remove the scorched rubble from the main street of Cobargo. A protester whose arrest in front of her screaming child went viral has again run into trouble with the law. The beautician has been reported for continuing to operate her business against lockdown restrictions. And school's back finally for some students. Prep Year 1, Year 11 and Year 12 were back in the classroom today, trialling a staggered return to learning. At the end of this week, eating out at cafes and restaurants will be a huge step for many Sydney families who are desperate to return to normality. But for many in the hospitality business, tight limits to the number of diners they can seat makes reopening barely worth their while.
A master chef can handle the heat in the kitchen. But even for a judge, the pressure of a pandemic is crushing.
We've had to work harder than ever to have our restaurants survive, because at the moment, that's what this is about.
But despite the easing of customer restrictions, the co-owner of 3 Blue Ducks restaurants says it's not enough to return to business as usual.
So we want to turn tables as quickly as we possibly can. I look at a place like Byron Bay. We're used to doing 1,000 covers a day. We can't do that with 10 seats.
Restaurants and cafes will be allowed to seat up to 10 patrons at a time as of Friday, with 1.5 metres between each one. For some, though, it's hardly worth it.
10 patrons is a 5% capacity, which is just not viable at all. So essentially, we need to get up to stage 3, where we're allowed to have groups of 100.
For Yami, reverting his cafe back from takeaway only won't be without its challenges.
There's a lot of prep. There's a lot of reorganising that you need to do. If people want it, you want to give it to them. We want to go back to normalise everything. So we are going to open the doors.
But don't count on a pub lunch just yet. Pubs with bistros attached are unlikely to see any changes for the time being.
We'll continue to advocate to the government that we should be given a chance right across New South Wales to open with those safety restrictions in place.
And that's a tall order in uncertain times. Sydney Pete for 10 News First.
One of the state's most notorious killers is expected to walk free from jail this month, with the parole authority announcing its intention to release him. Reginald Arthurell had already killed 2 men before he was convicted of beating Venet Mulhall to death in 1995. And her traumatised family is desperate to stop the serial killer being released.
It's been 23 years since Paul Quinn left court in disbelief after a judge decided not to send triple killer Reginald Arthurell to jail for life.
If the death of 3 people doesn't warrant a life sentence, then I'm really lost as for words as to what does warrant a life sentence.
Now, with his sentence for killing Mr Quinn's sister, Venet Mulhall, expiring next year, Arthurell could be free once more, after the State Parole Authority flagged its intention to grant him parole in less than 2 weeks.
I was outraged then and I'm outraged now. Why would you give somebody parole for the 3rd time that's been convicted of 3 homicides? That's just outrageous.
Mr Quinn doesn't want Arthurell to see what he looks like today. He knows better than anyone what the now 72-year-old is capable of.
Now, I discovered my sister's body and I seen firsthand the brutality of this person.
When he beat Miss Mulhall to death in 1995, Arthurall was already on parole, having killed 2 other people between 1974 and 1981. Despite his heinous crimes, the state government says there's nothing more it can do to keep him behind bars.
Well, this offender is one of the state's worst offenders in history, a multiple offender, and it's impossible not to feel enormous sympathy for the families of the victims.
All they can do is apply for an extended supervision order so they can continue to closely monitor him in the community beyond the expiration of his sentence next May. But Mr Quinn fears that won't be enough.
Now they're going to release him again and somebody else is going to be affected. And who is that somebody going to be? That's the question.
The final decision is expected on May 21. Leah Harris for 10 News First.
A final check on the run home now. Let's get back to Marina, who's got an update for us on the M4.
Sandra, look at the M4 outbound. Look at all these delays and the headlights coming towards us, and it's all due to this truck broken down through Prospect. It's still there on the M4 approaching the Prospect Highway, taking out lanes 1 and 2. The RMS team are there trying to get it moved off as quickly as possible, but all lanes are squishing into one lane getting past the incident, and it's causing very heavy outbound delays for the M4. Over 6 kilometres worth of delays back past Greystanes now. Use the Great Western Highway if you can. I'm Marina in the Car City Traffic Chopper.
Coming up here on 10 News, one of the consequences of this pandemic is the ripple effect spreading across the rest of our healthcare system. Now there are some very real concerns. People are missing melanoma checkups with potentially deadly results. Those details are coming up. Let's get to the news and sport now with Matt Burkham. Rugby League took an important step today towards playing.
Yeah, they did indeed, Sandra, and the players may be a little sore tomorrow as all the teams got back into full contact training. While Leichhardt Oval looks set to be crowd-friendly as May 28 quickly approaches. And Victoria gives the go-ahead for its AFL teams and the Storm to start training.
Car City is making it easier for you to safely buy your next vehicle. 7 days a week. Wander comfortably through 10 acres of vehicles while safely practicing social distancing, or find the car you want online and we'll bring it to you. Carlisle Avenue, Minchinbury. carcity.com.au.
Centrum provides multiple health benefits in just one tablet. Centrum, complete from A to Zinc.
We're going to throw a twist in the mix.
Nothing can prepare them for MasterChef's biggest ever twist.
Good evening. When the NRL resumes on May 28, it will be in front of no crowds, but the West Tigers fans may have a loophole. Teams took another step towards lift-off today with their first full contact training session.
It's never felt so good to get tackled. But the West Tigers are feeling it.
Might have to jump on some anti-inflammatories tonight and have an ice bath, but it's good. We play the game; it's a physical game, and it was hard trying to avoid each other, for the past couple of weeks.
The time off proved a blessing for Moses Mbai and Luke Brooks. They missed the opening 2 rounds through injury, but will be right for May 28.
I thought someone threw a tennis ball or a golf ball at my calf, and I turned around and looked around and didn't say anything, but then I went to take a step and realised that it was my calf that went on me.
And the whispers are getting louder. Josh Reynolds could be heading back to Belmore.
It's hard to put into words what he meant to the club, in my opinion. He's the Prince of Belmore, They love him there. He's a local junior and he hasn't paid for a meal ever there. He's a bit of a local hero.
When the NRL season does resume, Leichhardt Oval is one of the favoured venues to be used. The best part for the West Tigers, they could be the only team that has a live crowd. That is because there are several houses that overlook this end of the oval, and those balconies will be hot property.
We can start selling tickets from out of there, start making money.
How much would they go for a ticket, you reckon?
Pretty expensive.
$2,000?
Four ticket, yeah. All right, we'll say that, $2,000.
Emma Lawrence for 10 News First.
Victorian AFL teams and the Melbourne Storm will be allowed to resume team training from Wednesday. Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews today gave the green light for all the state's AFL and Seoul NRL team to train in groups of 10 from midweek. This means the Storm's session tomorrow at their temporary training home in Albury will be their last.
We have agreed to a set of arrangements that will allow training for AFL, for rugby league, for other professional sports to resume from just before midnight tomorrow night.
Well, a reboot date for the AFL season may be announced tomorrow. Titans coach Justin Holbrook says if it was up to him, Bryce Cartwright and Brian Kelly would have had the flu shot already. The Gold Coast side trained as a full squad for the first time today, but without their anti-vaxxers. Holbrook admitting the duo might not return this season.
It could be weeks and it could be they may not play for the rest of the season. So as a club, we've got to stand them down. They haven't followed protocol that the government's now set, and until that changes, then I don't know where it's this will finish, to be honest.
As it stands, the club would need state government concessions to allow them to train without the flu shot. Peter V'landys wants to revert to the one referee for the rest of the 2020 season because it will save money. Coaches are against it, while players don't seem to care. But one of the best ever whistleblowers believes the only way to go is back to the future.
2 refs or 1? That is the question.
The game is better suited to 1 referee.
Ideally, you'd rather 2 because that's what we've started the season with.
So whatever happens, we're just going to have to deal with it.
It won't be the ref's call on this occasion if the NRL cut back to cut costs. To go from 2 referees to 1 was discussed at a Project Apollo meeting last Friday, and it has the full backing of a former top-grade whistleblower.
I think there's been a feeling in the game in recent years that the 2 referees is probably not achieving what it set out to do.
Introducing the 6-a-game rule for ruck infringements rather than blowing a penalty, another concern.
Taking that second ref away will just allow teams more time in the ruck.
Once you go back to 1, the main focus is there, slowing the ruck down and that sort of stuff, because you can obviously do it with 1 ref.
But to continually wave 6 to go, I think is fraught with danger. Whilst it sounds very exciting to be able to do that, I think it is fraught with danger. I think 5 in the bin and back the referees up to make those tough decisions. Give the referees a little bit of ammunition.
Greg McCullum spent 11 years in the NRL. He refereed 3 grand finals and did so with only touch judges as his support to make the tough calls.
It'll be a shock to the system. It's also exciting that the referees are going to be given the opportunity to once again go out and referee the game.
McCullum also gave words of advice on how officials should handle player back chat.
You just stop him from speaking. In our day, you didn't allow that to happen. Every conversation that I had with a player on the field, I started and finished.
Michael Caine for 10 News First.
And Sandra, I like that back chat call, just 5 in the bin, just calm your jets.
I know, it's good advice. I hope they do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Matt. Coming up next, bushfire relief funding and back to school for some New South Wales kids. We'll be back with our top stories next.
And that was one magical Monday, and right now we're looking at you, Barangaroo, where it's 15 degrees. Tuesday is going to be choice, and it's on your television next with the Daily Bailey Weather Wall.
All exotics on every race across all Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Adelaide races. PointsBet.
Have you been missing Mel, Lloyd and Celia? Well, they're back with Ed and Sam on the new season of Have You Been Paying Attention? Tonight.
Tim Bailey is back. Tim, Autumn is putting on a beautiful blue sky display today.
You know what it is? It's a shiver with a shine, Souls. I've been thinking about that all day long. Throw in a shimmer as well. The blue sky's great, but yeah, the goosebumps are about in the morning, aren't they? Daily Bailey Weather Wall, forecast where we get it all. What do we got going on? Whole heap of high cloud. Jet streams down through WA into South Australia. Cold front across southern WA and starts to punch through the Southern Ocean and Tasmania, doing it hard under some very cold air and lots of cloud. You can see that. Weather map then on what was a magical Monday. finishes up a Tuesday dominated by a big high pressure system anchored firmly over New South Wales, but on the slide tonight out over the Tasman Sea. Little cold front starts to pop up through Bass Strait and Western Tasmania. That will clip southern districts of New South Wales tomorrow, but a mainly fine and sunny and calm day expected across the great state. So where do we look for the business of the BRAWL? Predicted precipitation, drips and drops across rooftops and crops. Tasmania is the wetland, you can see down there. Maybe western districts of Victoria as well, but New South Wales escaping, and it looks to be a shiny one. Shivery in the morning and shimmering in the afternoon. All right, weekends are a rich hunting ground for the Daily Bailey Weather Wall. This is Australia's favourite photo album, folks. It's never been more important. It entertains us in these days of lockdown, and gee, you have been fantastic. Where are we going tonight? Look at that. I thought this was a cracker. Swansea, Glen Macintosh, because where there's light, there's hope, and come Friday, we might be able to get to a restaurant. We might be able to get to a restaurant. Where there's light, there's hope. Love your work, Swansea. Glen Macintosh, shared on Instagram. This is how you do it, folk. Hashtag your pics, Daily Bailey NSW. I go through them every night. The good ones end up here. Take them landscape and follow me on Instagram, Daily Bailey 10 on that phone of yours. Get busy, do it now. Magnificent flight, Bensville, Mark Edwards, the Pelican. Its beak can hold more than its belly can. That's the Pelican. To be as free as a bird. It's coming, folks. It's coming. Hashtag Daily Bailey NSW. Let's capture the moment. And in days gone by on the mid-north coast, the camel train, Hoob Jack 70, captured it gloriously for us, and we love that work. Get them to me, folks. We are knocking on the door of 47,000 photographs. You are entertaining us from your camera. Glorious gear. All right, let's go and find your forecast, see what we can do on Tuesday around the great continent. Perth, 23 degrees, fine and sunny. Adelaide, a bit dodgy, some showers, 19 degrees. The Alice, calm, cool, collected, 11 through to 22 degrees. Fine and sunny in Broome, 34. A delight in Darwin, likewise. Cairns, a leaking sky, it's a showery one and 28 degrees. Brisbane, doing it beautifully under blue skies, 24 degrees. Canberra, down to -1, the goosebumps gather for a top of 14. Melbourne 9 through to 17 degrees, and Hobart a temperature spread tomorrow of 11 through to 18, and drips and drops on your rooftops down that way. New South Wales does the zoom into Bales, the choicest of Tuesday. It'll be a good looking day. Okay, a white lawn in orange, -2 degrees, and then a top of 12. Dubbo 2 to 18 degrees. Wagga Wagga 2 to 15. It's chilly in the morning and it's shiny in the afternoon. Broken Hill 18 degrees. Coffs Harbour 21 degrees. Tamworth, a frost, down to 0, tops of 19 degrees. Lismore down to 8 and a top of 20 with a shower. Newcastle 21 degrees, fine and sunny along the coast. Nowra and Bega doing things beautifully, 21 degrees. All right. The super suburbs of Sydney tomorrow, it's a shiverathon early. Penrith 3, Richmond 1, but tops of 21 degrees. 15 at Katoomba, Terry Hills does 19, and Mascot 21 degrees. The official forecast for Sydney tomorrow, fine and sunny, and the 7-day forecast on your television in 25 minutes.
Tonight, 5 months on and still not enough help. The forgotten victims of the bushfire crisis on our south coast still struggling to survive. A protesting parent at the centre of yet more drama, a southwest Sydney mum who has been reported to police again. And just 2 weeks until school students are back full-time, the new hope for homeschooling parents. Well, the Prime Minister was keen to assure people in the areas hit by the summer's devastating bushfires that he has not forgotten them despite the global shift in focus to the pandemic. He says money is being spent at twice the expected rate to help fire-blasted communities. But as National Affairs editor Hugh Rimmington reports, there is still much to be done.
Well, the Prime Minister probably had the worst day of his political life earlier this year when he went to the bushfire-blasted community of Cobargo. There he was abused, he was brushed off by the locals. They didn't even want to shake his hand, but he says he has never forgotten them or any of the other communities that suffered so terribly over summer. He initially promised $2 billion towards a bushfire recovery plan. He says money has been spent at twice the original rate. and more than $500 million more will be targeted at projects that communities themselves will identify as being important to them.
And a day has not passed in our government where those issues have not been getting the attention that they deserve.
But in the town of Cobargo itself, the shops are still shut on the main street, the ruins of buildings are still an asbestos hazard, and locals say until recently, some people were still living in tents.
One particular girl that moved into my place was sleeping underneath an Aruma bridge with a young 5-year-old child.
I know that every person who has been displaced from their home has been given the offer of temporary accommodation.
Most of the worst-hit areas in New South Wales fall into the federal electorate of Eden-Monera, which is now, of course, the subject of a bitterly contested by-election fight that at least is focusing some fresh attention into those communities. Mental health remains an enormous issue. There are big reports of depression and PTSD among people who came through those fires over summer, and some of the locals are saying just as they still need that help, they're seeing a lot of that professional attention now drifting away back into the cities.
A southwest Sydney mother arrested while protesting with her young son is back in the sights of police. The 36-year-old beautician was fined for breaching COVID rules at the weekend. This video of her screaming child then went viral. Today she thanked those who have rallied around her.
Thank you so much for everyone's private messages of love and support. Without you all, this wouldn't be possible. I really appreciate it.
Officers have now received reports she may have been operating her business against lockdown restrictions after a potential customer asked, "Are you open?" and she responded yes. From Friday, we are set to see the biggest easing of restrictions since this outbreak began, allowing restaurants and cafes to have customers dine in, but at a reduced capacity. Sydney Pete joins me now with more details on the story. Sydney, are restaurants ready to open?
Well, Sandra, I'm down here at Barangaroo, and as you can see, it is very quiet, and it has been for a couple of months now. But hopefully come the weekend, that's going to be a different story, because as of Friday, restaurants and cafes will be allowed to open with 10 people at a time inside. Now, that is part of the new easing of restrictions, which will allow them to come in and eat 10 at a time, and then following those social distancing restrictions. But of course, some owners, cafe owners and restaurant owners are wondering if it is financially viable to be having just 10 patrons in their cafes at a time. Today I spoke with Andy Allen, MasterChef judge and celebrity chef, and he has said that it just doesn't seem worth it to be able to open up a restaurant for dine-in with only 10 customers.
I look at a place like Byron Bay, we're used to doing 1,000 covers a day. You know, we can't do that with 10 seats. So we'll make modifications to what we're doing now. But I mean, 10 people at a cafe or restaurant, it's going to be pretty hard to make money out of that.
Now, that is some good news for some cafes, which will be able to offer that extra service to their customers. But it is a question mark for a lot of larger venues, which aren't sure yet if it is going to be worth their time and worth the money and all the extra staff they're going to have to put on. And that goes for pubs as well. The bistros attached to pubs aren't included in those restaurant and cafe easing of restrictions. The Australian Hotels Association said they are still advocating to the government to try and get in line with those easing of restrictions so that they can open with social distancing. But it will remain to be seen how those restaurants will fare should they choose to open come Friday.
School's back, if only for a day. Students arrived at classrooms across the state for the first time in weeks as the staggered return to classes began. As the children go back, we recorded just a single confirmed case of COVID-19 in our state. That's from more than 5,000 tests. That single case was someone who travelled here from the UK. Despite that, there are still community hotspots authorities are still concerned about. And the message is, if you live in Canada Bay, Canterbury, Bankstown and Cumberland, be vigilant.
From Emu Plains to Enfield, this had to be a school first. Students racing to get into class.
To see my friends.
So excited. It was just really, yeah.
Sometimes there are no words, because after a 6-week absence, what could sound better than this chorus?
Good morning, Miss Matthias.
Welcoming half her class back, this is Dorothy Mattias's first year of teaching, and she's learnt a lot.
Nothing compares to being face-to-face with your students and being able to teach them and seeing their faces and their reactions and teaching to that.
If the next 2 weeks go well, we expect to have full-time face-to-face teaching very quickly in New South Wales by the end of May.
While it's a staggered student start, there's been a massive new school addition, more than 550,000 hygiene supplies, including 40,000 bottles of hand sanitizer. And while we know parents have done a great job at home, teachers have their work cut out for them. This term, educators will be teaching a refined curriculum, looking at the essentials and drilling down on any gaps that may have been missed over the past few weeks. Some staples, like excursions, sport and assemblies, are still off the books, but everyone is working hard to get back to normal.
I'm really excited. It's an absolute pleasure to have our students return today.
It's a bit hard getting up so early in the morning again, but other than that, we're good.
Ali Donaldson for 10 News First.
The Prime Minister has rejected speculation that the government is considering winding back its $130 billion JobKeeper program. Scott Morrison dismissed questions about a possible shake-up as premature, but did leave the door open for the wage subsidy to be adjusted or targeted for industries hit hardest.
We are only 6 weeks into that 6 months. And as we need to adjust based on advice and the strength of the economy and how many people we're getting back into jobs, well, these are the things we'll be watching carefully.
But the opposition is still pushing for the scheme to run longer and include all casuals and some visa holders. Aged care provider Anglicare has confirmed the death of yet another resident at its embattled Newmarch house. 18 people from the facility have now lost their lives. The latest fatality had previously tested positive for COVID-19, but returned to negative results before passing away at the weekend, which means they will not be included in the state's corona death toll. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has mapped a path out of the country's 7-week lockdown, despite a death toll above 30,000. But outside England, he is already facing rebellion from the leaders of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Europe correspondent Phoebe Bowden reports.
Trying to provide clarity about what happens next in the UK.
We must stay alert, control the virus and save lives.
Boris Johnson's ditching of the stay-at-home slogan seemed to have the opposite effect.
I don't know what stay alert means.
The UK went into lockdown together, but England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales will come out at their own pace, with controversy over what's right for a nation that's lost 32,000 lives. The PM says it's not the time to lift the lockdown, but wants some people to return to work. Until they do, the government is paying 80% of their wage.
We now need to stress that anyone who can't work from home, for instance, those in construction or manufacturing, should be actively encouraged to go to work.
And from Wednesday, he's extending the daily 1-hour limit on outdoor exercise.
You can sit in the sun in your local park, you can drive to other destinations, you can even play sports, only with members of your own household.
If cases and the daily number of deaths are falling, schools may restart in June. The first restaurants could reopen in July. As Boris Johnson mapped out the road out of lockdown, he also revealed fines will increase for people doing the wrong thing. Anyone over the age of 70 is ordered to stay at home. That includes the 94-year-old monarch.
I send my warmest good wishes to you all.
Queen Elizabeth set to drop public duties indefinitely. Phoebe Bowden for 10 News First, London.
Stay with us after the break. There are concerns melanomas are being missed as pathology labs record a major drop-off in testing. In sport, the Gold Coast Titans get into contact training minus their anti-vaxxers. And the former whistleblower, all four reverting to one referee.
Be surprised inside in one irresistible meal. Fancy Feast. Love is in the details.
US intelligence have confirmed that the COVID-19 virus is not what? Sam,
Not good.
Well, we've got something good. These Fantastic Five are handing out some lockdown laughs on the new season of Have You Been Paying Attention? Tonight after MasterChef.
A new danger is emerging from the COVID-19 crisis. People are missing vital medical checkups. Melanoma is one such threat, where any delay in diagnosis and treatment can be deadly.
Actor Jessica Stafford has fought off some tough customers on screen, but none so life-threatening as melanoma.
I'm lucky to have my leg, I'm lucky to have my life.
As an aspiring actress, Jessica sunbaked for that perfect tan, but what also developed was a malignant mole, removed safely because it was caught in time. She's now speaking out after latest research confirmed Australians are avoiding skin checks because they're frightened of contracting COVID-19.
And they're thinking, I might go when everything settles down. And my message is that they should go and they still be going to their doctor and they still be having their checks.
Because melanoma won't wait.
It can appear within a matter of weeks and then within a matter of weeks progressively increase in size.
New statistics suggest we're our own worst enemies. Almost 2/3 of Australians still actively tan because they believe it makes them more attractive. 9 out of 10 people understand sun exposure can lead to melanoma, but less than 1 in 5 protect themselves. And only about 10% of us are having an annual skin check. Even Jessica admits she thought about skipping her 3-monthly skin check because of COVID-19.
I was hesitant too, I thought, oh gosh, what's going to happen? How important is this for me?
Melanoma safe advertising's already gone down the shock and awe path of the anti-smoking lobby, but with little impact on case numbers. Sun lovers 30 years of age and younger still among the worst offenders, despite a lifetime of sun-safe messaging behind them.
COVID-19 should not get in the way of a skin check. It's critical during this time that you book in and don't miss.
Tim Collins for 10 News First.
We won't know the true cost of COVID until later this year, but the budget black hole is expected to be hundreds of billions of dollars, and the unemployment hangover could last until 2024. Charlotte Goodlett has the details in the Day in Finance.
Today should have been filled with predictions about what the budget will hold tomorrow, but with so much economic uncertainty, the Treasurer has pushed it back until October. However, we did get some numbers today. Deloitte Access Economics has done some modelling and it thinks we are on the cusp of 2 of the biggest deficits in our history. For this year, it's anticipating it to be more than $143 billion. Next year looks a little better at more than $131 billion. Compare this to last December, not too long ago, and it looked a lot different. Treasury was predicting back then a surplus of $5 billion. Now, any positive numbers are unlikely until the middle of the decade. The key, of course, to getting back to normal is getting people back into jobs, and the government has predicted that we will be at an unemployment rate of 10% by the June quarter. Deloitte thinks we will be waiting until 2024 to get back to our pre-pandemic levels of 5%. So it will be quite a long time before things get back to normal. But let's take a look at the markets now. And the ASX 200 finished the day up by 1.3%. Some of the biggest gains came for travel and consumer shares, with a lot more optimism about the economy reopening. Webjet was up by close to 20%, and NAB was the only of the big 4 to finish down. Right now, the Australian dollar is buying just under 65.5 US cents.
Matt Burke is back with the rest of the day in sport. And Matt, as the NRL returns to contact training, vaccinations remain a vexing issue.
They still do, Sandra. Good evening. Titans coach Justin Holbrook concedes he could lose Bryce Cartwright and Brian Kelly for the season if there's no change in the flu shot debate. Today, the Gold Coast trained without their stood-down teammates for the first time.
Eased restrictions meant the whole Titans squad was back training together, with 2 notable exceptions.
Could be weeks and it could be they may not play for the rest of the season. So as a club, we've got to stand them down. They haven't followed protocol that the government's now set, and And until that changes, then I don't know where this will finish, to be honest.
The club is hopeful of a quick resolution, but if the players don't change their mind, it will require a Queensland government concession. Nathan Pete's back training today after getting the flu shot. Justin Holbrook admitting if it was up to him, Bryce Cartwright and Brian Kelly would do the same.
I'm one of the 98%, and there'd be 98% in the community as well that will say just get the shot and come back to work. But those 2%, they got some, I guess, different views and different circumstances, and it's not that easy for those guys.
The tackle pads were out at Red Hill and across the NRL as teams held their first contact session in 55 days.
It was good. It was something that we haven't done for quite a while, obviously, so I think everyone was pretty excited to, get back and train as a group.
Definitely not a full throttle approach. It's more a progression stage.
6 weeks of isolation training serving as a refresher for Darius Boyd as he heads into the final months of his NRL career.
Take all the contact and the games out. I think you can play till you're 40. So obviously you have to get back in the contact and make some tackles and play week to week, which is the hard part.
Veronica Eggleton for 10 News First.
Peter V'landys wants to revert to one referee for the rest of the 2020 season because it will save money. Coaches are against it while players don't seem to care, but one of the best ever whistleblowers believes the only way to go is back to the future.
Look, I'm in favour of it, although I didn't think it had come in the middle of a competition. There's been a feeling in the game in recent years that the two referees is probably not achieving what it set out to do.
And the cost-cutting move will be put to the ARL Commission next week. Rugby Australia's financial black hole has got a lot darker amid reports that over the past 4 years, the organisation has blown $500 million. The 2019 annual report shows RA spent $120 million last year. That's over $320,000 a day. The World Rugby Rescue Package is expected to arrive this week, but it won't be near enough to clear all debts. Last year, the Wallabies slipped to number 7 in the world, with crowds and TV viewers also down. Brighton, the Premier League club of Australians Aaron Moy and Matt Ryan, has had a third player test positive to coronavirus. Neither the Socceroos star is believed to be among the trio, but the positive result casts doubts on the Premier League season resuming.
At the end of the day, we've said it 1,000 times in the last 8 weeks, player and staff safety must be an absolute priority.
And even though fans will not be allowed into stadiums, the league's Project Restart faces resistance from clubs who will not approve plans to use neutral venues. And Sandra, we're hearing there's going to be a phone hookup tonight between all the clubs and hopefully something will get resolved.
We'll find out tomorrow. Thank you, Matt. Stay with us. Barney's back shortly with your week ahead, weather-wise. Stick around.
Spread of infection. We don't care which soap you use. We care that you care. For you and for all. Dove.
The world's most exotic fragrances are made by nature. That's why we've created Botanica fragrances, infused with natural ingredients that are responsibly sourced. Botanica by Airwick.
Smartly monitor and track physical distancing at work with the new i2 Safe app. With smart monitoring Bluetooth, the app tracks worker distance to ensure a safe work environment. App access available soon. Register your interest today at cloudA2k.com/i2safe.
Up next, Australia starts to roll back restrictions, some states more cautious than others. Your guide to pickling, why people have taken it up to get through the pandemic. And as the country shut down, these Aussies stepped up. Meet the frontline supermarket workers turned unlikely superheroes. The project next.
Big blue autumn days, chilled but charming as we hit the Daily Bailey weather wall, the forecast where we get it all, and this is the reason why. The big high pressure system has just been stabilised across New South Wales, gets on the slide a bit tonight and sneaks out over the Tasman Sea. Cold front whacks up through the Southern Ocean into Tasmania and Victoria, but skips to the south of New South Wales. So another chilly morning, but a cobalt blue sky for most of the state tomorrow. Little cold front went past southwest WA as well. But right now, let's have a look at New South Wales, the great state. Broken Hill down to 7, top of 18 degrees. Orange, a white lawn in the morning. The frost is on the way, -2 for a top of 12. Tamworth down to 0, frosts as well, 19 degrees. A shower for Lismore and 20 with a minimum of 8 degrees. Newcastle 7 through to 21 degrees. The coast is in colossal form. It's going to be glorious. 21 at Bega. Nowra does the same, and Sydney 9 through to 21 degrees. All right, the super suburbs of Sydney will start off a little bit shivery but end up shimmering with blue sky. Campbelltown down to 2, top of 20. Bankstown 3, top of 21. Parramatta 4, top of 20 degrees. So you get it. Richmond 1 degree, a top of 21. Get over the goosebumps and then enjoy the afternoon blue sky. Gosford 20 degrees, Terry Hills 19 and Mascot 21 degrees. The 7-day forecast, the sunshine Tuesday, Wednesday, then some rain, 18 and 19 Friday. Your weekend though, sunny again Saturday and Sunday. Love it. In the west, the rain comes 17 and 19 Thursday and Friday, and the weekend just glorious. It's lovely, it's autumn and it's awesome.
Thank you, Tim. That is the news for now this Monday, May 11. From the team, thanks for your company tonight. Look after yourselves and each other. See you tomorrow.
Tonight, Australia starts to roll back restrictions, with some states more cautious than others.
You only get one chance.